Yes, ladies and gentlemen, what a groovy start to a beautiful evening. Big night tonight. We release the KRAKEN at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, as always. At 11 p.m. Eastern Time, Sackheads Radio comes to you live from the left coast. I will not be swayed by Megyn Kelly. I'm coming to you live from the nation's capital. We are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation. First to the Republican and then the Socialist. I'm your exceptional one, Ken McClinton. I want to broach you all a story about Social Security before I get started. I want you all to know my wife, who watches this program with great devotion simply because the star of it happens to be her husband. She really enjoyed last night's show. She said she learned so much from last night's show that it was like sitting in front of a seminar that you really enjoyed. So I want to send kudos out to my wife, Mrs. Biggs. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. She's watching via Ustream or live stream, one way or the other. Mary Brockman's in our chat roll tonight. Love you, Mary. Mary is my bouncer. If you diss her, you diss me, you will be dismissed. You can go to the exceptionalconservativeshow.com to greet her with a kiss. And Dave, my man, the unpleasant blind guy, is up in the housey, the hizzy, or the owsy, or whatever it is. At the SHR Media Live at the exceptionalconservativeshow.com. I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in tonight. Once again, I tell you, we are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation. First to the Republican, and then the Socialist. You know how we start off our program. And you know that tonight we are moving forward with our panoramic view of how did African Americans move so brazenly without fear or trepidation into the realm called socialism. It has a whole lot to do with what your educational system has done, but more importantly, with the church, and specifically, I'll say the Black Liberation Theology Church has done to African Americans over the past 3/4 of a century. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. You all know what we do, and I apologize. I started down this road, but I'm going to go ahead and complete it. Love it. Love it. I love that music. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance as we normally do. Thank you very much. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love that rendition. Let's start it off tonight with our beautiful, beautiful children, K3 kids, and pledging allegiance to the United States of America. Find your right hand, put it over your heart, and let's get to going. Kick it, kids.
Ready, begin. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Woo! That's what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. I've been hitting and holding this week, if I like to use the lingua franca of the urban settings. Ralph Chittams has joined us in the SHR Media Live Center at the exceptionalconservativeshow.com. I tell you, Ralph, we're going to talk with him tonight about Donald Trump being punked by Megyn Kelly. Oh, man, that was really presidential. I just want to say, very presidential. Definite sign of leadership material. But that's not going to stop him. According to Donald Trump, you could just shoot somebody in the middle of the street and they still support him. So, you know. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking about that tonight. We've been on a roll this week, and I'm trying to deliver to you the 1-2 punch combination. I'm trying to get the combinations there for you to understand exactly how did we get to where we are. And how exactly is this allegiance to Hillary and Obama bordering on the cult of personality? How did we get here? And we talked about W.E.B. Du Bois, and we also talked about Margaret Sanger last night, and we're going to continue along that particular rift in terms of why the Margaret Sanger decision was so poignant historically. And we're also going to look at Karl Marx and a few other things. But this week, I know the underground professor will be sitting back and lauding me over how intellectually superior I have been this week with my professorial presentation with great oratorial skill. Yeah, sure. But I want to deal with I want to deal with a story that came out regarding Social Security, and there are a lot of elderly persons who will eventually suffer because of what Congress did the other day, and I'm trying to get that up right here. That a law was passed and which, according to the Social Security proposal, it may cost retirees as much as $50,000 if they are not prepared by May 1st on this. And I'm going to have to go back to my Facebook page real quick and bring this up, because I wanted to share this also with my bouncer, because a lot of people are just thinking, you know, hey, don't worry about it. When you get to a certain age, you can retire and that'll be it. I want to put this in my chat roll for everyone. HR 1314 and what it means for your retirement. Now, this is Dr. Lawrence Kodakoff, a former senior economist with the Council of Economic Advisors to Ronald Reagan. The senior advisor stated that some individuals stand to miss out on an estimated $50,000 in Social Security benefits. Why? Congress has hidden in a seemingly innocent piece of legislation labeled H.R. 1314, a radical reform that threatens the financial security of as many as 21.3 million Americans. I'm going to put that in the chat roll for people to understand. This is not going to hurt the Donald Trumps and the Bloombergs and the Gates. This is not about them. Okay, they can afford it. They got it. And so, thank you, Mary. On this show, anyway, Ken's my favorite conservative commando. Thank you very much. I think I'm the only one on. Oh man. Hey, Ralph. 21.3 million Americans will suffer this. Now, it goes into effect on May 1st, 2016. It goes into effect on May 1st, 2015. Now, I'm putting this stuff in the chat roll so people can be aware of what this Congress under Speaker, is it Ryan? Speaker Ryan, and Senate Mitch McConnell have done. Now, the 21.3 million eligible seniors who will get hit with this particular penalty still have time to lock in the benefits. The deadline is May 1st. And that basically means that if you are retired, or oh my goodness, thank you, my exceptional producer who wants to make me get out there and pull the snow out from under her car, brought me some water. I really appreciate that. God will take care of it. He put it there. That means if you are retired or about to retire, you still have the opportunity to lock in thousands of dollars worth of lifetime benefits before they disappear forever. And so this is basically one of the things that you have to be concerned about. They are banning certain benefits in the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015-2016. According to the Bipartisan Budget Act 2015-2016, Section 831, it is meant to prevent individuals from obtaining larger benefits than Congress intended. So according to this, in Section 831 of this legislation, it clearly states this reform was intended to prevent. And what does the new law do? A provision that could allow you to collect a one-time lump sum check from Social Security for as much as $124,174. A restricted application that can boost your income by $63,648. And basically, it could be $50,000 for a lot of people. And so you have to consider this. If you are single and over the age of 60, you need to talk with individuals who deal with this matter on Social Security. If you're married, another of these disappearing provisions allows you to call up your Social Security clerk, make a simple 6-word request, and immediately raise your income by an extra $1,329 a month. So there are many things that you can do to prepare yourself. But virtually, Congress has decided to pull the rug out from under you. Literally. So I want you all to be aware. And you can learn more if you go to their particular site, read the information. Pardon me. Excuse me, my nose is so stopped up, it's really pathetic. Pardon me. So I just want you all to know and be aware of that. What we're going to do is we're going to go to a quick timeout. And when we come back from that particular timeout, I want to pick up from where we were last night. I want to bring to your attention what Karl Marx thought about race, how that ties in with the Ku Klux Klan, and then, my friends, how Dr. King was able to give the knockout punch to his daddy and the rest of the Republican right. Dr. King endorses abortion. We will be back with more of the best in urban conservative talk right after these messages.
Hi, my name is Christopher Arnold. I'm the executive chef of Infused Restaurant, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the meals that we prepared here. We're making a pizza. We use French Italian sausage that they cook here and slice it up. Our pizza dough is in-house made. Our pizza sauce is in-house made. So everything is fresh and ingredient. This is our Thai curry chicken. The sauce is made with coconut milk and the Thai red curry. It is juicy chicken thighs as well as some mixed vegetables, served with jasmine rice and pita bread. So now we're going to prepare our famous blackened tilapia and grits, our fish and grits on the menu. Once the fish is ready, and our meal will be complete. Let me tell you about our infused beef burger. When we kick the spice up just a little bit with our infused sauce, we start off with 80-20 USDA ground chuck ham patty burgers, like half a pound of burgers, and we're going to grill it to perfection. After I flip the burgers, we add the sauce and let it cook on into the meat that's a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of pepper jack cheese to this burger to spice it up a bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got to say. 6339 Allentown Road, Temple Hills, Maryland, 20748. 301-449-9000. Infused.com. Ladies and gentlemen, after you've gone down the street, because actually the Social Security Administration is right down the street from Infused Restaurant. After you've left that building to get your $50,000, go on up the street to Infused Restaurant, 6339 Allentown Road, Temple Hills, Maryland, and spread a little of those ducats right there. And for the rest of us, spend the weekend having a good time at Infused Restaurant. 301-449-9000. Infused Restaurant. I don't know if I'll be able even to do another commercial tonight because there's just so much. My wife was telling me last night, Ken, the way Glenn Beck was doing it, you look better than him doing this because you just got so much information. And it connects, and it makes you go out into the deep water. And so I am going to bring you all out into some deeper water. This is not the commentary, the comical commentary form that you're used to, the satirical, the cynicism of chemical. I want to bring us out and stretch us to understand why we are in the position that we're in, why so many young people have slovenly accepted the principles, well, not even the principles, the concepts, the general concept or ideal of socialism, which we all know Margaret Thatcher said it best, that socialism is only as good as the amount of money that someone else has. Once they run out of that money, then socialism fails. And so what I want to do is I want to pick up from where we were last night. We were talking about the role of the Ku Klux Klan in the vote and how, and I know a lot of you are thinking right now, well, Ken, how does that mesh, Ken? I mean, the Margaret Sanger, W.E.B. Du Bois, the Ku Klux Klan. Karl Marx sent a letter to Abraham Lincoln trying to deter him from the pathway of a capitalistic country. He wanted to eschew the principles of capitalism and as well install the ideals of Marxism. Of course, Seward responded, not Lincoln. and basically cast Karl Marx off as the radical occupier that he was for his day and time, and literally that he was of little concern. We were going through the Industrial Revolution. After that, we were moving into a more closely aligned republic, as which our founding fathers aspired to, though not perfect, seeking a more perfect union always. There were those who wished. Now, Karl Marx was seething with great joy over the fact that after the Civil War, there was the institution of the 8-hour workday. And we'll find that out in just a few moments when we read the letter. But Karl Marx was also an individual who understood that you could use emotion to act as a sword for change without actually bludgeoning someone with blood. So there were those who were attempting to install socialism into America step by step, moment by moment. That was a practical way of doing it. There are many who align themselves to the ideal that somehow a socialist nation that's built on the collective would actually formulate a more prosperous and more successful and succinct organizational tract for those who are individualistic. You would do better if you were contend and become a part of a socialistic structure. The collective was always better than the individual. Well, the other group at that time period that had a slightly skewed ideological belief was the Ku Klux Klan. They were the terrorist organization created by the Democrat Party. Yes, the socialists of today, well, actually more along the lines of what a communist organization would do, they used force. While there were the Marxists that were attempting to use the vote and legislative and philosophical battle and debate, the Ku Klux Klan was using force. They were bludgeoning people. They were killing people. And they were killing people not because of the color of their skin. A lot of the socialists want you to believe, the modern day black activists want you to believe that only black people were lynched by the KKK. I want to explain to you that the KKK, the Democrats' terrorist organization, cared not about the color of your skin. What they cared about was your ideological indifference. Let me go to the tape for a moment. No, I'm not going to play a tape, but I want to read first Karl Marx. Marx on Racism. This was a letter of Karl Marx to Voigt in New York, London, April 9th, 1870. April 9th, 1870. He writes, and he wrote extensively. It was very lengthy, but let me give you what he spoke of in race. But the English bourgeoisie has, besides, much more important interests in Ireland's present-day economy. Owing to the constantly increasing concentration of tenant farming, Ireland steadily supplies its own surplus to the English labor market, and thus forces down wages and lowers the moral and material condition of the English working class. See, there's an immigration issue here that Karl Marx is trying to advantage. And most important of all, every industrial and commercial center in England now possesses a working class divided into two hostile camps, English proletarians and Irish proletarians. The ordinary English worker hates the Irish worker. And as an Irishman, Scottishman, I draw a great antithesis to that notion. The ordinary English worker hates the Irish worker as a competitor who lowers his standard of life. In relation to the Irish worker, he feels himself a member of the ruling nation, and so turns himself into a tool of the aristocrats and capitalists of his country against Ireland, thus strengthening their domination over himself. He cherishes religious, social, and national prejudices against the Irish worker. His attitude towards him is much the same as that of the poor whites and the niggers in the former slave states of the USA. Yes, Karl Marx, close enough, Karl Marx used the term niggers. I want you to understand something. It's not like the little girls who get a t-shirt with the letters and they align themselves. Well, maybe it is. But he had no great affection for black people. He goes on to write, the Irishman pays him back with interest in his own money, sees in the English worker at once the accomplice and the stupid tool of the English rule in Ireland. This antagonism is artificially kept alive, intensified by the press, the pulpit, and the comic papers. So I want you to know the three places that Karl Marx identified that you are to go into and spread the good news of Marxism: the press, the pulpit, and the comic papers. In short, now he's being very hostile here in terms of bringing out a key point, but I want you to know that sometimes there are messages in the messages. By all the means at the disposal of the ruling classes, this antagonism is the secret of the impotence of the English working class, despite its organization. It is this secret by which the capitalist class maintains its power, and that class is fully aware of it. Everything is about class. He goes on to say, in the United States of North America, every independent movement for the workers was paralyzed so long as slavery disfigured a part of the republic. And that be true. Yeah, sometimes the clock is right. Labor cannot emancipate itself in the white skin, where in the black it is branded. But out of the death of slavery, a new life at once arose. The first fruit of the Civil War was the 8 hours agitation that ran from the 7-league boots of the locomotive from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from New England to California. The General Congress of Labor at Baltimore declared the first and great necessity of the present to free the labor of this country from capitalistic slavery is the passing of a law by which 8 hours shall be the normal working day. In all states of the American Union, we are resolved to put forth all our strength until this glorious result is attained. Do you understand that Karl Marx, envying the fact that he wishes he were here to lead that particular charge, also brandishes the fact that after the Civil War, he was beginning to see the foundation of socialism enter into the United States of America. Some people would say, well, that was for the good, 8 hours. You only want to work 8 hours. Karl Marx knew it was something more than that. Karl Marx was talking about labor, control of the individual. Well, the Ku Klux Klan was marching to that. And let me just put this letter in there in my chat roll for everybody who studies. Everybody who watches or listens to my show knows that they can go directly to the Freudian slip. Yep, you heard it. You can go to the exceptionalconservative.com and then the SHR Media Live. You can follow along. I always give you the resources for which I talk. So you'll be able to study it and show yourself approved. The Ku Klux Klan. I want to give you a testimony that was made before a committee of Congress back in 1871. It goes, one of these teachers, Miss Allen of Illinois, whose school was at Cotton Gin Port in Monroe County, was visited between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning on March 1871 by about 50 men mounted in disguise. Each man wore a long white robe, and his face was covered by a loose mask with scarlet stripes. She was ordered to get up and dress, which she did at once, and then admitted to her room the captain and lieutenant, who, in addition to the usual disguise, had long horns on their heads and a sort of device in front. The lieutenant had a pistol in his hand, and he and the captain sat down while 8 or 10 men stood inside the door, and the porch was full. They treated her gentlemanly and quietly, but complained of the heavy school tax, said she must stop teaching and go away, and warned her that they never gave a second notice. She heeded the warning and left the county. The message of the Klan grew more violent. Those murdered during the KKK's campaign included Arkansas Congressman James M. Hines, 3 members of the South Carolina legislature, and several men who had served in the state constitutional conventions. According to testimony and other violence, Klansmen killed more than 150 African Americans in a single county in Florida and hundreds more in other counties. The Klan was more successful at taking the vote away from black Southerners. For example, in April 1868, Georgia gubernatorial election, Columbia County East, 1,222 votes for Republican Rufus Bullock, but in the November 1868 presidential election, the county cast only 1 vote for Republican candidate Ulysses Grant. I want you to understand here that the terrorist organization for the Democrat Party took away the right to vote. So when you listen to socialists today brandishing their radical activism, saying that we must pass the Voting Rights Act for black people to keep the vote, that's a bold-faced lie. Black people who were free were always able to vote in this particular country and did so, until the socialist Democrats understood that by force they could change. And this is where the connector comes, and why you should be ordering, if you're in a state in which you can. I wish I could in District of Columbia. You should be ordering as many guns and ammo as you possibly can. Because at once in our country, there was a certain ideological bent that was backed up with a firearm. And if you did not go along with the ideological bent, bad news, funerals. Let me just draw that to a present day. If you don't go along with the gang in your neighborhood, then the gang in your neighborhood will get you out of it. You see, the gang is a domestic terrorist organization today, which is off the record supported by the socialists, because as long as you have a gang problem, you'll always have a socialist who cares enough to try to do something about it. When you no longer have a gang problem, you're probably represented by a conservative or Republican who has given you or recognized the power of you to handle your own business. By force, communism. By vote, socialism. By brandishing a weapon to force you into thinking a certain way, communism. By forcing you to choose based on mythology, lie, and innuendo, socialism. One robs you of the ability to have a life, communism. Socialism robs you of the ability to have a living. The Klan Act of 1871 was essential. It was essential because part of the issue of that day was Reconstruction. You see, unfortunately, and You didn't need Lyndon B. Johnson to make you understand that. There were blacks, conservative as well as other, who firmly believed that if it were not for the Union label, the Union military, then they would not have the peace that they needed. Ladies and gentlemen, it was in the 13th volume of the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to inquire into the condition of affairs in the late insurrectionary states that we find that the Ku Klux Klan, created by this organization, the Democrat Party, actually took away the right of blacks to vote. You see, it wasn't the Republicans that took away the right to vote. In fact, the Republicans were sending the NRA and others to try to support the rights of suffrage for freely saved slaves. It was the terrorist organization, the domestic terrorist organization, the KKK, which suppressed the black vote. The bloodiest single instance of racial carnage in the Reconstruction era, the Colfax Massacre, taught many lessons, including the lengths to which some opponents of Reconstruction would go to regain their custom authority. Among blacks, the incident was long remembered as proof that in any large confrontation, they stood at a fatal disadvantage. The organization against them is too strong, remarked Louisiana black teacher and legislator John G. Lewis. They attempted armed self-defense in Colfax. The result was that on Easter Sunday of 1873, when the sun went down that night, it went down on the corpses of 280 Negroes. On Easter Sunday, 1873, the bloodiest single instance of racial violence in the Reconstruction era happened during the Colfax Massacre. On April 13, 1873, in Colfax, Louisiana, a group of white men, including members of the White League and the Ku Klux Klan, clashed with members of Louisiana's almost all-black state militia at the local courthouse. The cause of the battle was ostensibly a contested local election. Through racism and partisan politics were significant factors as well. There were some other lessons learned, and individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois joined upon the thinking of that period. If we cannot be free and vote, then we must eradicate the entire system. We must revolt against the entire system so that we might be free and vote. You see, that thinking has prominently shown its face in Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter is asking for a revolution, much the same as Bernie Sanders is asking for a revolution. They are looking to overturn this system, that they might institute their own utopic system. W.E.B. Du Bois understood that for ideology, you may sacrifice life. Life is collateral as long as you have ideology, which is an offense to the modern day conservative who believes that we should fight the good fight against ISIS and their ideological warfare. But you'll have the socialists on the other side that say, you know, that's not fair, we're not being tolerable. And then conservatives will back down and say, well, yeah, we're not being tolerable. W.E.B. Du Bois and Margaret Sanger learned long ago that collateral damage is acceptable in America if you're going to impress your ideological bent upon the citizens of this nation and take away their liberties and freedoms. The sad thing is that black people have never been taught this before and probably are hearing it for the first time. When we come back, we're going to be drawing some more inferences to the Ku Klux Klan, W.E.B. Du Bois, Margaret Sanger, and Dr. Martin Luther King. You may not like what you hear tonight, but you will hear it.
Every time there's a mass shooting, for the next month, you'll hear the shooter this, the shooter that, his family this, his life that. But when somebody stops a mass shooting from happening, all you hear is this. Why wouldn't an insecure, unstable young man who believes he's invisible to the world and has nothing to live for, but wants to leave his mark on the world before he goes so that he can validate his life and make the world stand up and take notice of him, not commit a mass shooting? The media practically turns these guys into celebrities overnight. Hell, I take that back. They basically turn them into demigods. Don't believe me? I give you 10 seconds to rattle off the names of the most recent mass shooters in the last decade. If you're able to mention even one name to yourself, that's insane. What's the name of the guy who had a carry permit who tackled the guy who shot Gabrielle Gifford? Name the guy in the mall who had a concealed carry permit and stopped and deterred the guy who shot the mall up in Oregon. Or the name of the person who shot and stopped the kid who tried to shoot at the movie theater a couple of days after Newtown happened. Not one of these people's names are identifiable within 10 seconds, but I'm forced to learn the inner details of these sociopaths' lives who try to amass the highest body count. And get this, then the media steps in and makes themselves experts on gun control and try to vilify anyone who's not for the hijacking of the Second Amendment right. I take that back. Their natural born right as human beings for self-preservation. I'm sick of this. What kind of backward society do we live in where we glorify the sociopath and then demonize the good people who want adequate means of protecting themselves from said sociopaths? This is willful retardation at its finest. And you gawk at the idea of placing armed guards in schools or arming teachers because you don't want the kids going to school surrounded by guns. But you're okay with making these places gun-free zones while admitting in the same breath that we can't completely stop mass shootings. And reality has shown time and time again that obeying a gun-free zone sign is not anywhere on these mass shooters' bucket list. You want to stop mass shootings, and I mean stop them in their tracks? Put people in a position to put these bastards down the moment they open fire or show up intending to do harm. These guys are corner campers. They want an easy body count, not a shootout. You destroy the mass shooter's fantasy real quick by sending bullets in their direction. Right then, the fantasy stops and the reality kicks in, and that's when they take their lives. Then celebrate the heroes who stopped the mass shooter. Let the mass shooter die the same way he lived, as a nobody. Instead of forcing me to watch a guy with orange hair admire his work every time they bring him to court, surrounded by cameras, and watch every move he makes like he's Kim Kardashian. At least I get an endorphin spike when I see her. The whole anti-gun, pro-gun back and forth fight that happens after every mass shooting is like two bird-brain chicks fighting each other over a guy who they thought was their boyfriend, but come to find out he was sleeping with both of them at the same time. And now he's standing there watching them fight each other when they should be fighting him. Like the bad guy, not each other. This isn't a pro-gun, anti-gun thing. Meet the coward in the fantasy and stop them, and don't glorify them, and they'll cease to be a fantasy. And they'll have to find new ways to make themselves relevant. Taking away guns isn't the answer. It's a feel-good measure because people don't want the responsibility of being responsible for their own safety. They rather believe that the police will be there when we know and they know and the police know they won't. No one wants to fight for the protection. They want the government to do it. They want the police to do it. Because I'll admit, it's scary to think that the only person responsible for your safety is you. But guess what? That's reality. Cops can't always be there. Obama definitely can't be there when your life is on the line or your kids. The people in the best position to stop mass shooters are the people who are there. Give them the means to stop these bastards, and I promise you, all these mass shootings will stop once they realize there's no more free shoots. Instead of trying to save just one kid's life, let's try to save 10 or 12 or 20 and have maybe only one person die, instead of trying to save just one life and 20 die.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got some big things coming up tonight at 10 p.m. We release the KRAKEN. I'm Chrysler and Muriel Bowser, Ike Leggett, and Miss Blake up there in Baltimore want to hear. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Exceptional Conservative Show. From east to west, north to south, the most influential urban conservative show on today. Collateral damage. When your thoughts merit execution, You can always count on the press, the pulpit, and the comic papers to make your point relevant. Now, you see, there was a thug in St. Louis, Michael Brown, who strong-armed robbed a convenience store, assaulted the owner of the convenience store, and left with the property of the convenience store without paying for it, along with his friend. Police officer finds the two walking in the middle of the street, and what entails is in the birth of a new nation. The birth of a nation occurs based on racial anonymity, racial hatred. Black people began to, around the country, jump up and down and think, oh my goodness, a white cop has shot and killed a black person and then left him in the sun all day. Wow. Now, you see, many of us condemn ourselves based on just the myth, which is laying out for us to believe. It's the first thing that's reported, of course. No, the facts are always far behind. The truth is often the slowest thing to get out of bed, because a lie has gone around the world 7 times since its arrival. But the press ate it up. The pulpit preached, how dare a white cop, by any means necessary, put on a blue robe called his uniform and shoot in cold blood an innocent black man like Michael Brown. Yeah, the pulpit. And then the funny papers, the SNLs, and they all began to join in. And what Karl Marx had expressed is, if you can exploit the emotional attachment of slavery in America to any of your philosophical presentations, you will have absconded with the victory. Love you, Shannon. Glad to have you here. The Ku Klux Klan had been in operation for a number of years throughout the 1868 origins. Actually, 1867, when the beginning talk of it became, actually you can go to 1866, the end of the war, virtually. In fact, the KKK was formed as a social group in Tennessee in 1866. The name came from the Greek word kuklos, meaning circle, and that meant a clan, a circle of brothers, a band of brothers. And with the passage of the Military Reconstruction Act in March 1867 and the prospect of free men voting in the South, the Klan became a political organization. Notice how they moved from a social group, Black Lives Matter, a social group, the Socialist group of London. Notice how they moved from being a philosophical, ideological place of conversation to an ideological place of confrontation. Former Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest served as the first Grand Wizard and overall leader. But you might want to know that Bedford Forrest actually recanted and repented. He spent the rest of his days trying to unify blacks and whites. That's the story that you don't hear. Now, the organization was loosely organized There was a clan in Georgia that had a titular head, the Grand Dragon, who at one point was probably General John B. Gordon. Former Klansman John C. Reed recalled that Robert Toombs' law partner and son-in-law, Dudley Dubois, served as the Grand Titan for the 5th Congressional District, while Reed himself served as the Grand Giant of Oglethorpe County. The tentacles of the social group bypassed class. You see, the ideological always had a leader, but they always had the ideology to hold on to nonetheless. I'll put that in the chat roll for those who are studying about Georgia and the Klan. In fact, during the Reconstruction era, the Klan was on steroids, and they continued to grow. And in fact, there was a Woodrow Wilson president who played Birth of a Nation, which was a story of the Klan coming to power. Woodrow Wilson was the president of the United States at the time that he played it. You see, the tentacles were long. He was a Democrat president of the United States. The tentacles were long. There are those who speak that there has been an end of the Ku Klux Klan. I would say indifference. No, that's not the case. Wherever there is the ideology of superiority, whether it is Dubois and Sanger standing in front of a woman's womb, or a member of the Klan standing in front of a schoolhouse in Louisiana, they both march to the same forceful tune. By force, if not by your choice, the decision will be made. Why am I keep bringing up the abortion issue? Because the abortion issue makes a great difference. We read last night about the woman in the new race that was written by Margaret Sanger. It was her manifesto. Most people don't refer to Margaret Sanger's manifesto in conversating or talking about the issues by which the Democrats, now turned socialists, have derived their philosophies. It's always been the same for the socialists, wherever they are in the world, whether it's Mao or Stalin or Lenin, or even the members of ISIS today. It's always been the same. By force, by force. We must by force. We will tell you that you are choosing on your own, but the gun at your head clearly indicates by any means necessary. In terms of Margaret Sanger, I want to read to you a portion of her study. Hopefully I'll put it in there. Yes, I did. Woman and the New Race. Many people have not read her manifesto, and encouraged not to read her manifesto because it takes away from the spin of the modern day socialist or progressive woman who will stand before you and say, hey, the baby is a part of my body, when the truth of the matter is, it's not really. You have been given a gift. You are the only vessel by which God can use to bring that gift to life. You are the incubator to the progenitor, the male. You are the womb man. Yet, this is not what she wants you to be. Let me read to you the goal. Margaret Sanger, the goal. What is the goal of woman's upward struggle? Is it voluntary motherhood? Is it general freedom, or is it the birth of a new race? Notice the socialists clinging to their birth of a new nation, the birth of a new race, the birth of a new culture, the birth of a new constitution. Notice how they're looking for a birth and yet resent the woman who has the power to give birth. So much so that they would like to take her power from her and force her, like Mao does, or did. One child, baby, one child. Sanger goes on, voluntary motherhood implies a new morality, a vigorous, constructive, liberated morality. That morality will, first of all, prevent the submergence of womanhood into motherhood. Oh, don't you see the sin of it all? How accosting it is by God that you must sacrifice your beautiful body from your teenage years and give birth to a child that takes you out of the size 2 and into the size 10. Oh, God, help us. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, when we return, drawing the lines so that you can see as we're moving into the election year that this is a little bit bigger than Donald Trump and Megyn Kelly. This is about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And there's one group of people who have experimented well in urban America and done successfully in urban America, destroying the family, destroying the faith, destroying the economy, destroying the people. And yet, they continue to vote for them. Gosh darn you, Lyndon B. Johnson, you are so right. I want to thank also Rebooting Liberty, High Plains Talk Radio, and also SHR Media. And tonight, SHR Media comes to us live from the beautiful state of California, the left coast, of course. We will be right back right after these messages. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you back to the most exceptional conservative show in America. So much so, we named it that. The Exceptional Conservative Show, live from the nation's capital, where we are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation, first to the Republican and then the Democrat. We're about to release the KRAKEN into the world. But before we do that, we're going to lead off with a Pledge of Allegiance. Why don't you kids take it away? Put your hand over your right heart, or your right hand over your left heart. Find your right hand and put it over your heart, and let's pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
Ready, begin. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Woo! Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking tonight. This is a big night. King Jr. endorses Sanger. Socialism is gift wrapped, indeed. And as well, it's gift wrapped in social justice and some other crap. But nonetheless, the endorsement by Dr. Martin Luther King, there's controversy over that, and we'll talk about that. But nonetheless, having Dr. King endorse abortion, or at least Planned Parenthood's objectives, solidified the movement of the radical left from 1966 on. And it also became the detriment and downfall of the King movement. You will begin to see that the leftists, the radical leftists, discarded Dr. King as if he were a piece of used newspaper, rolled up and rolled away in the wind. Yeah, believe it or not. But you know, on nights like this, Wednesday night, we like to bring you our very good friend, a gentleman and a scholar, a man of great will and way. None other than the pastor, Ralph J. Chittams Sr., formerly known as the D.C. Vice Chairman of the GOP, currently known by tonight's show as the KRAKEN. We are about to release the KRAKEN into the world. Without a shadow of doubt, let's give him a phone call right now. Doctor. I keep calling him doctor, but you know, maybe that's an indication that he should go back. One ringy dingy. Two ringy dingy.
Hello.
Hello, we released the KRAKEN. There we go. Ralph Chittams, it is an honor and privilege to have you on the air with us.
And it is a pleasure to be with the exceptional one himself, Kenneth McClinton. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with you, sir. Listen, what's up with you GOPers? Are you afraid of blonde bimbos interviewing you?
Real Republicans aren't afraid of anybody, so who are you talking about?
I'm talking about Donald Trump, the Donald himself. Apparently, he has such great. Actually,
Please understand, Donald is Donald, and he is playing on a different playing field than everybody else. He went out and he made a statement a few days ago, which everyone thought was outrageous, but in fact, it is true. As far as his followers are concerned, he could stand on the corner of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and they would still vote for him. Donald Trump not doing this debate tomorrow night was the most brilliant marketing ploy I have ever seen executed by any politician since I have been following politics all my life. Who have we been talking about for the past 12 hours?
Donald Trump?
Who is going to be talked about for the next 12 hours?
Donald Trump?
Who is going to be talked about even after the debate is over for the next 48 hours?
Donald Trump. So there you go.
So I don't blame him. You know, what is his downside for not showing up?
I don't think he has one.
He has none.
Yeah.
Now, what is his downside if he does show up when you consider the fact that Roger Ailes, Megyn, and the rest of those fools at Fox have invited to be guest questioners for the RNC presidential debate an illegal alien and someone who is an avowed anti-Trump Muslim activist blogger who has equated Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. I thought these debates were supposed to be about real journalists asking substantive questions to candidates seeking the highest office of the land and not some kind of a sideshow with three-headed women and bearded ladies like you're at a circus.
Wow. Well, what has Roman politics become today but a circus? It's a shame because I want to ask you also about the number. And I'm quite sure the numbers of people who are in the debates will change eventually, hopefully after the Iowa caucus. But you have 7 people up there on the stage, 8 people if Donald Trump was there. Have we gotten to the point where we understand that this race is between 4 people?
Well, it depends on the 4 you want to name.
Krispy Kreme.
The media would have us believe that this race is now between Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Jeb Bush. Now, if those are the 4 names that people think that this race is boiling down to, they need to just go to bed and just wake up in a few months when all this election is over because they clearly don't have the intelligence required to go into a voting booth and do something intelligent.
Exactly. But the 4 are Carson, Trump, Cruz, and on the very end, Rubio. And although the polls are showing that Trump has a big lead in the Iowa caucus is known as a place where the rebel rules. And Ted Cruz does carry a big stick in Iowa. Would you not say that?
Well, absolutely. You know, Ted Cruz has his group of followers just as Trump has his group of followers. But these guys, you know, I'll be sitting back, these guys are flamethrowers.
Mm-hmm.
And the question that I have to ask, and I think everyone needs to ask, is that what you want in your chief executive? As the President of the United States, do you want a flamethrower? Now, clearly, we want somebody with a backbone. We need somebody with a spine. We need somebody who is willing to drop a bomb on ISIS wherever they are and just blow them back to their God.
There you go.
But we don't need someone who just picks fights for the sake of picking fights.
Now, there are those who say that it was very unpresidential for Donald Trump to excuse himself from this race because a president should be able to take on all comers, nevertheless. Do you concur with that theorem, or is Donald Trump in the right by saying, hey, I pick and choose my battles?
No, I think as a candidate for the office of president, he should have shown up.
Mm-hmm.
He should be there on that stage. And when the illegal alien or that woman who clearly is biased against him, that Muslim activist blogger, when they came at him and asked a question, he should have done what any seasoned politician would do, not answer the question that they presented to him, and basically backhand slap them back to wherever it was they came from, and then moved on to the next question.
Bingo. Now, everyone's been on the internet talking about Ronald Reagan didn't show up for the Iowa caucus, and virtually he lost. Well, he didn't show up for the debate, so he lost the Iowa caucus. What they don't talk about is the fact that he fired his staff and then hired Ed Meese to take over from there, and also John Sears, and he went on to win in a landslide in his campaign.
But he also didn't call somebody a bimbo.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
So if you're gonna make these comparisons, come on, at least let the comparisons be legitimate.
No, I want to ask you here: is Donald Trump trying to let us all down, and show? Because if the analogy is that Ronald Reagan didn't show up in Iowa and he lost the Iowa caucus, is Donald Trump showing his hand that maybe he knows that he's going to lose the Iowa caucus, and this is a good way of sharing that analogy with the world?
No, this is Donald Trump being Donald Trump and being the master manipulator of the media that he is. Remember, this dude is a reality TV star. He is doing to the political media class what Kim Kardashian does to the entertainment media. She flashes something and they come running, they write a story. Donald Trump says something crazy, does something crazy, and the media pundits run and give him free media. There's a reason why Donald Trump hasn't had to spend a dime in advertising during this entire election cycle. All he has to do is say something crazy, and he sucks all the air out of the room, and the media gives him all the free airtime that he could possibly want, and he doesn't have to spend a dime on it. And everybody else is scrambling around, buying ads, buying airtime, buying radio spots, paying for attack ads, and Donald Trump is getting his stuff put out there for free. Now, who's the idiot?
I know who the idiots are. Listen, we are talking today with the D.C. GOP Vice Chairman and future doctor. We just keep praying that he goes back to college and get that doctorate. Or actually, you can go to the Pentagon and pay for one. Never mind. But we have Ralph J. Chittams, our KRAKEN. We're releasing him to the world. And you can also hear him on Radio 1 with Roland Martin when he's doing commentary there. Faith in the 2016 campaign. I'm going to put this in the chat roll for everybody because the Pew Research is coming out with their recent study in terms of this. And what they're saying is, and among presidential candidates, Trump seen as least religious. Do you know who is the most religious? At least the world sees as the most religious candidate in the presidential race?
Probably Cruz.
No, guess who? Dr. Ben Carson is the most Christian one.
No. See, you just made two different statements.
Okay.
The last thing you said was he is the most Christian one. The first question you ask is, who do people think is the most Christian one?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I picked Cruz is because when you look at all the evangelical support that's running out, it's running over to Trump and it's running over to Cruz. And the guy who is the Christian, the guy who lives his Christian beliefs, the guy who lives his Christian values is Dr. Carson. But yet, when you look across the spectrum of evangelical Christians, all his preachers are lining up behind Cruz and Trump.
Now, I have a question for Eddie. Why are they all lining up behind Trump? Because he read from the 2 Corinthians? Is that why we should all be lining up? Because he read from 2 Samuel?
I have no idea why these Southern Baptist evangelical preachers are going to run up behind a Donald Trump when these same guys gave Barack Obama what for over his faith. And I would argue that Barack Obama is more of a Christian than Donald Trump.
Wow.
That's saying a lot.
That is saying a heavy amount. Boy, bring out the bacon on that one. Just don't serve it at the White House. Just don't say it doesn't go with the Mac. The Pew Research says fewer Americans will be deterred by atheist presidential candidate. Is that a possibility that religion really doesn't make a difference anymore? That we have become a secular nation, and so be it. Donald Trump fits the ambitions of being a constitutional nation while being secular at the same time.
Well, unfortunately, the faith community has made itself irrelevant by its silence.
Wow.
We have allowed ourselves to be bullied into silence. And so we have become irrelevant. And then when someone shows up who has a real belief system, who really believes that Jesus Christ is the Lord and he is the Savior, and that he died on the cross and he was buried and rose on the third day with all power in his hands, and that, he died that all may be delivered, people look at us like we're crazy.
Yeah, they do. And the unfortunate thing is that because faith has been so commercialized to date and made into just a tool of intolerance by those who happen to be on the left, the progressives, and that we have accepted it as a yoke that we must carry, a burden that we must bear. It is very easy to understand why many of the evangelicals, black or white, are jumping across the aisles for Donald Trump. I think a lot of Republicans are just thirsty for victory. Any old thing will do as long as we win. Is that going to be successful in the end?
No, I have argued, and inside the DC GOP and in other Republican circles, that I would rather lose a principled race than win with a Democrat like.
Yeah.
Give me a real constitutional conservative, and let's fight this out on issues and ideas and principles. And if I lose, I lose. But I would rather lose that fight than to win running some, lightweight Republican who may as well be a Democrat. I don't want to win that race.
Now, Pew also says here that there are more than twice as many Republicans who say that they would be less likely to support a presidential candidate who has been an elected official in Washington for many years as who would be more likely to support such a candidate. 44% say that they are not interested in an incumbent. Is that a message that should be sent home to the DC GOP and to the other politburos around the country that if you've been in Washington more than 2 years, we just don't want you there anymore?
Well, that should be a wake-up call to everyone across the country. I mean, that should be a lightning strike into the heart of the RNC, that the American people, and not just Republicans but Democrats, they want to vote the bums out.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to vote all the bums out. And I can understand that, especially as a constitutional conservative. We send people to Congress who run as supposed as alleged Tea Partiers, and they say this, and they're going to fight for this, they're going to uphold constitutional principles, and they're going to hold conservative values, and they get to Washington, D.C., and in 6 months, they sound like a Democrat.
Yeah.
Well, we just voted you in because you said you were going to do something different. So this is why people are really turning against career politicians. And this is why I don't understand why they're not looking at, I know why they're not looking at Dr. Carson more, because the media is not telling them to. The media is telling them to look elsewhere.
But,
and unfortunately, we have a whole ADD generation, and that goes from 18 to 85, that just listens to sound bites, and they don't go out and do their own homework and do their own research.
Well, also, isn't that part of Ben Carson's problem here? I mean, he was the cat's meow in December. I mean, if the election was held in December last year, we would be saying President Ben Carson. But he canceled his or suspended his campaign for a bit. He fired his staff. He jostled things around. He fumbled on foreign policy. He didn't command the airwaves or the media to follow him after that. Is this some of Ben Carson's fault too?
Oh, absolutely. He and his campaign have to bear some of the blame for it. But here's something that's really interesting that people need to consider. Dr. Carson's former campaign manager, Bennett, who quit recently, is now a consultant to the Trump campaign. So that means you have to seriously wonder, was he really working on Dr. Carson's best behalf, or was he always a plant as a part of the Trump campaign? Because how do you go from Ben Carson to Donald Trump? I could see if he went from Ben Carson to maybe Ted Cruz. But how do you go from Carson to Trump? So that leads me to believe that he may have been there all the time, undermining the campaign by making stupid decisions.
Okay, now this is inside the Beltway conversation here, and I want to bring it out to the rest of the world. I don't know if everybody else around the world has heard it or not, but there have been rumblings inside Washington, D.C., and I know that you've heard this, that Donald Trump has paid off individuals to support his campaign. That he has recruited from every candidate their best supporters to support his campaign. Is there any truth to that, or is that just bravado from the Beltway?
I mean, well, no one knows for certain because no one's seen the cancel checks. But, but you do have to wonder why certain people are supporting Donald Trump. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. I mean, why would Sarah Palin support Donald Trump? Why would Jerry Falwell Jr. support Donald Trump? It defies logic. And so when things defy logic, usually there's cash involved.
Yeah, just a little something.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying anybody took anything. I'm just saying
usually
there's cash involved.
Yeah, the quid pro quo.
I'm saying that usually.
Some people
that has occurred.
Some people have been given
has been made.
Exactly. Some people have been given an offer that they couldn't refuse.
Exactly.
Want to talk with you?
Speaking of offers that can't be refused, I was really touched and upset when I heard that Tessio died from The Godfather, Abe Vigoda.
Oh my God! Yes,
I love that character.
What they should do all weekend long, they should play The Godfather. Abe Vigoda was awesome.
He was the man.
He was. He was the man. I tell you. Oh man, Abe Vigoda, Fish, the whole Barney Miller. I love Abe Vigoda.
Okay, that was just a sidebar. Sorry.
I apologize. You took me there. All right, we're talking with the great guru of inner city politics and commentary, the DC GOP vice chairman himself, Ralph J. Chittams Sr. Want to ask you real quick, and my commentary has recently throughout Facebook regarding Mayor Muriel Bowser, executive guru out of Montgomery County, Ike Leggett, and Sheila Blake Rollins up in B-Mar. But we get a report. This is just in. The Washington Post reports that Washington, D.C. officials issued $1 million in parking tickets during the blizzard.
Of course. It's all about money. It's all about money, and it's darn thing funny. It's so bad.
Wow. $1.3 million in paper. $67,000 in towing fees. Another $9,100 was collected for towing fees from abandoned cars. 91 of them, in fact. And this is reported in The Hill today. Is there going to be any repercussion? Is there going to be any repercussion whatsoever for those three, Leggett, Bowser, and, well, we don't have to worry about Sheila Rollins or Blake or whatever her name is. She's not running for anything. But Bowser, I mean, she failed. I mean, she failed.
No, she didn't.
Oh, she didn't?
No, she did a great job. All you have to do is look at social media. Social media said she did a great job, and that's where all the low information voters go to get their news.
Oh.
Good shape.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, for those of you who are packed in over there in Southeast Washington, D.C., that you haven't actually seen a truck come down your street, well, we just saw a group of trucks actually go into Baltimore, going in the direction of Baltimore. So I guess that's where your truck is.
Yeah. But did you hear that Al Sharpton was complaining about racism during the snow?
Really? Really?
Yeah.
What was his complaint?
He wanted to know how come black snowflakes weren't hired to fall from the sky.
Probably because somebody did not do a good job in terms of the diversity program. Oh, man, I tell you.
Yeah, the union fell down on that one.
Union fell down on that one. Listen, Ralph J. Chittams releasing the KRAKEN. Sir, how can people hear from you? And especially, can you give us an update on some candidates who are running for office thanks to your support?
Well, we have the fantastic Shannon Wright from Baltimore, who's going to be running for the president of the Baltimore City Council. Dynamite woman, Jay, go faster.
Yeah.
Shannon. I have to apologize. I forget her name, but there's another Republican woman running for a council seat up in Baltimore as well. And it's just, this is the year of Republicans running for office across this country in local down ballot elections. And we need to just get together as a group and just back every candidate, regardless of where they're running, because we need to send a message that the conservative wing of the Republican Party is strong. Black conservatism is still strong, and that's the only hope that this country has. If people want to reach out to me, I'm on social media, RJ Chittams Sr. on Facebook and Twitter. Want to drop me an email, it's ralph.chittams@dcgop.com. And as you mentioned earlier, if anybody has TV One, I'll be on with Roland Martin on News One this Friday at 7 a.m. I'm giving my recap and commentary on the debate from Thursday night.
Pissing people off, doing it in a dramatic style. Nobody does it like Ralph Chittams. There you go. Thank you, KRAKEN. We have released the KRAKEN. We're putting him back for the week. None other than Ralph J. Chittams of the DC GOP. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are thinking about running for office and you want to get into your primary, get in contact with Ralph now. Now. Don't wait until June and pick up the phone and say, Ralph, I wanted to run for office. Can you help? No. Do it now. Pick up the phone now. Get in contact with Ralph. Let him support you. Let him help you. We're putting together a string of people to support you and help you run for office. And I believe that you're going to be successful this year as we throw the bums out. Thank you, Ralph. God bless you and your family. I tell you, what a wonderful opportunity it is every Wednesday night to release the KRAKEN. Tomorrow night, Dr. Michael Jones, I am his sidekick on New Day Black and Red. We will be doing our sight unseen type of preview of your. We do it live on Thursday night. You hear it recorded on Saturday afternoon, but it's just as good. We'll be right back. Come on back for our commercial-free last quarter of the game.
My name is Christopher Arnold. I'm the executive chef of Infused Restaurant, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the meals that we prepare here. We're making a pizza. We use fresh Italian sausage that we cook here and slice it up. Our pizza dough is an in-house made. Our pizza sauce is in-house made. So everything is fresh and ingredients. This is our Thai curry chicken. The sauce is made with coconut milk and the Thai red curry. It is juicy chicken thighs as well as some mixed vegetables, served with jasmine rice and pita bread. So now we're going to prepare our famous blackened tilapia and grits, our fish and grits on the menu. And our meal will be complete. Let me tell you about our infused beef burger. When we kick the spice up just a little bit with our infused sauce. We start off with 80-20 USDA ground chuck ham patty burgers, like half a pound of burgers, and we're going to grill it to perfection. After I flip the burger, we add the sauce and let it cook all into the meat next to the We're going to add a little bit of pepper jack cheese to this burger, spice it up a bit.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, what better way to end the evening but with the very best Infused Restaurant. Derek Williams, we need to come see you this weekend. We need to find a way out there. Infused Restaurant, not that we have to find a way. I mean, I can hopefully hitch a ride with my wife. Hopefully she'll let me in the car. But nonetheless, 6339 Allentown Road, Temple Hills, Maryland, 20748 301 449 9000. That's infused.com. You have entered into the last quarter of our program. You know that this is a commercial-free quarter of our program. In the chat role is none other than Sackhead Sean himself. We love Sackhead Sean, and we love Clint. We tolerate Free Sacco. So we're so glad to let us all know that Sackhead Sean will be joining us. Thank you, man. Sackhead Sean will be joining us along with Sackhead Clint and Free Sacco at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. We also are graced this evening with Mary Brockman. Oh, what a beautiful young woman who is also our bouncer. If you diss her, you diss me, you will be dismissed. The beautiful Kel Fritzy, who is the most beautiful Canadian on radio, is with us. She produces everything, including the kitchen sink. Dave Milner is in the chat row with us. The beautiful Pastor Shannon Wright, who is running for president of the Baltimore City Council. Glad to have you here. We're honored to have you here. And Dan Butcher, the hardest working man in his office. Well, actually, his wife does all the work and he takes the credit. But nonetheless, Dan the Man Butcher is with us tonight. High Plains Talk Radio is the format that you need to be listening to. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take us back to Margaret Sanger for a moment. Because Margaret Sanger, you may have heard her theology preached in your pulpit and did not know it. You see, Margaret Sanger used a guise that most liberals use to justify their ideology and the by any means necessary way of achieving the end to the means. She refers to it as a birth of a new race. Nazism was a birth of a new race. Klanism was the birth of a new nation. Do you get the point? Apparently, what was prologue was decrepit and deserved death. From it, a birth comes. Now, the woman who strangely is the antithesis to motherhood calls it a birthplace, a birth of a new race. Margaret Sanger wrote her manifesto back in 1920. You are told not to look at her manifesto, but listen to the person who is moving the levers behind the wall. You see, Margaret Sanger was a eugenist. Margaret Sanger believed in abortion. Margaret Sanger believed in population control. W.E.B. Du Bois believed in population control. He believed in a talented tenth. He believed that 9/10 of black people were unwarranted and unnecessary, and it would take 1/10 of them to lead throughout the world. And in fact, Barack Hussein Obama, the President of the United States, the 44th President of the United States, is also someone who believes in population control. How do I connect the Ku Klux Klan, who believed in population control, control of the black race, to Barack Obama, who believes in population control of all races, especially those who don't share the ideology of the birth of a new race? How do I make that connection? How do I make that connection between the Klan, W.E.B. Du Bois, Margaret Sanger, and you must remember that W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the founding members of the NAACP, which was used to precariously send the message of Planned Parenthood throughout the world. But I digress. How do I draw that distinction between... I'm making a huge bridge because it was back in 1968 that Du Bois passed away. He was in his 90s at that time period, but there was a torch that had already been passed. How do I make the connection between W.E.B. Du Bois, who was enthralled with FDR, and FDR enthralled with him? How do I make that connectivity that shows that within our community, those who, and remember, 1930 was the year in which Howard University created its first social science department. It became the model for all other HBCU social science departments. They began to teach that science wasn't the objective, it was the social, kind of like the Klan with the social. How do I make the connectivity, Ken, to show that you can wrap social justice, you can wrap the whole concept of socialism, the whole concept of a war on poverty? How do we wrap all that together? Who is the bridge for all of that? I won't delay any longer. I will tell you. Margaret Sanger and her group knew exactly who that thread was. He was the most prominent black man in the entire free world. Yes, bigger than Sammy Davis Jr. His legend preceded him everywhere he walked. His picture was one of 3 on every wall in a black person's home. The Trinity was always represented in a black person's home in the South. No, I'm not talking Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I'm talking about John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. For the radicals, you would move the Dr. King and replace it with Malcolm X. But nevertheless, someone had to fit the bill. Someone had to give legitimacy to the liberal movement. And I want you to know that by 1966, the liberal movement was becoming very radical. Stokely Carmichael was becoming, with SNCC, a very radical antithesis to the nonviolent movement of Dr. Martin Luther King. And in fact, people were turning now to Stokely Carmichael as the prince of the civil rights movement and away from the boring Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah, you may not think that. You may not have heard that. In fact, the myth and the legends of Dr. King are so immense and so great that if I speak irreverently of him, I am chastised, castigated, ostracized, thrown out as merely a radical sounding as a gong in the wind. The truth of the matter is Dr. Martin Luther King was a human being, a human involved with the politics of local Atlanta, knowing that he was never going to succeed Dr. King Sr., especially when Dr. King Sr. was a true conservative. You see, everyone wants to label Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. a Republican. The true Republican in the family was Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whether he was registered or not as a Republican, we could always quibble and deny. Or whether he ever voted as a Republican. He certainly used a gentleman's speech before the Republican National Convention, who happened to be black, as part of his I Have a Dream speech. He was a very wise speaker, I can tell you that. Lonnie Poindexter always says, I steal from Kim McClinton, and I also steal from other people too. But I also give you the footnotes to see that. Dr. Martin Luther King was in the midst, by 1966, of a time that had seemed to left him behind. More radical, more violent groups were coming to the fore. Black Panther, SNCC, and so many others. They didn't want the boring Dr. Martin Luther King. But he still had a sense of chutzpah amongst those in the urban community. Those in the faith community looked upon Dr. King as royalty. I want to give you a portion of his life, and I want to bring you to the point of where we can make these jumps. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in 1929 in Atlanta to a teacher named Alberta King and a Baptist minister named Michael Luther King. Michael Luther King, yes. Michael Luther King would actually change his name to Martin after a trip to Europe, but that's for another day. 1944, he graduates from high school at 15, and he enters Morehouse College. 1948, he receives a BA in Sociology. I want you to understand what Dr. King received his degree in. Okay? He received it in Sociology. Already there is a bent towards liberal study. He receives a degree from Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. Enrolls in Boston University for his PhD in 1951. In 1953, he marries New England Conservatory music student Coretta Scott. They eventually have 4 children. In 1954, he becomes minister of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. In 1955, he receives his PhD in systematic theology from Boston University. He becomes an activist after that. By 26 years old, he's leading the boycott of segregated Montgomery buses and gains national reputation. Now, I want you to mark the date in which he becomes a national figure. Cal Fritz says we call them Ms. degrees. He gains national prominence in 1955. This becomes the decade of Dr. Martin Luther King between 1955 and 1965. I want you to pay attention because Planned Parenthood was. Margaret Sanger was. And they used Coretta Scott. Stay tuned, people. Stay tuned. In 1956, King's house is bombed. All of a sudden, great deals of attention are thrown in his way. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling prompts Montgomery to desegregate buses in 1956. 1957, King helps found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. And it was that conference that eventually began to disband and break apart. While its remnants still remain today, the more violent ends of it began to grow in 1960, but we'll talk about that in future shows. 1958, he writes Stride Toward Freedom about the bus boycott. In 1959, he visits India to study nonviolence and civil disobedience. You can see already that there are those who are telling Dr. King, Malcolm X being one of them, that the only force against ideology that people will understand is true force. Dr. King is trying to subscribe people to civil disobedience and nonviolence. It is a toil and a task in and of itself. 1960, he joins his father as co-pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. This allows him the freedom of being able to connect with Daddy King locally and remain prominent nationally. His national figure grows. In 1963, King is arrested and jailed during anti-segregation protests in Birmingham. He writes Letter from Birmingham City Jail. Oh, trust me, Dr. Michael Hughes and every other activist will tell you that you must read this book. I recommend that you read it too, because it has some good things in it. He argues that individuals have the moral duty to disobey unjust laws. Well, that was made poignantly clear by St. Augustine many centuries before. He's just re-uttering it for you to know today. 1963, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, he delivers the most prominent speech in American history, I Have a Dream, during the March on Washington. It was attended by 200,000 protesters. It creates a powerful image. It builds momentum for the civil rights legislation. Now remember, the Klan tried to obstruct, through its social order, civil rights and political rights. They understood that their ideology was about control of rights. There are those continually in the civil rights battle that believe that only force is the proper attitude towards rights and questions of rights. Dr. King continues on, but he's beginning to lose as he is doing the crossover. Y'all understand why soul music and R&B music, why if anybody's ever seen the movie The Temptations, why people are all upset about the crossover? Normally because there were racial attitudes on both sides. Black people can be racist too. There were a lot of black people that began to see Dr. King as a member of the white privileged society, not a black man anymore. I'm just telling you, you can fill in the blanks accordingly. 1964, he publishes Why We Can't Wait. Congress passes the Civil Rights Act of 1964, outlawing segregation in public accommodations and discrimination in education and employment. I want you to mark this time period right here, 1964. This is the denouement. This is the top. This is the height of Dr. King. You see, behind the scenes, leaders, and I face this with open heart, closed case, just to be honest with you. There are so many people that want to be seen as the leader, the motivator, the one who is moving the movement, who want credit to be shown upon them, that they're beginning to separate and fight amongst themselves, even his own backers. You see, King wins the Nobel Peace Prize. He is king. And that there are so many that see him no longer on that platform. They see him as a risk rather than a reward. 1965, King and SCLC joined voter rights march from Selma to Montgomery. Police beat and tear gas marchers. King addresses a rally before the state capitol, builds support for voting rights. 1965, Congress passes the Voting Rights Act of 1965. You see, Congress made you think that a Voting Rights Act was necessary for black people to vote. The truth of the matter is, black people have always been able to vote, except for when the Democrat terrorist organization known as the Ku Klux Klan prevented them from doing so, or even today when the white liberal socialists tell them, you don't need to vote, we'll take good care of you. Mid-1960, King's growing opposition to the Vietnam War angers President Johnson, and I want you to take a look right here. You see, for blacks, when he was in the pulpit preaching just like this, telling people that someday we shall rise and we shall be set free, we shall come and not be gone. When he was preaching like that in the pulpits of America, he was the man. Black people looked upon him as somebody who was looking out for their best interests. And when white people began to see him as that national leader for all the black race, someone who was sophisticated enough with his doctorate degree to hold a lively intellectual conversation about public policy and about other events and look upon it in a historical context. When he was able to expound in such liberality, he was seen as a savior. All of this is beginning to come crashing down. You know the FBI is watching him. You know that he's been messing up a few times here and there. Don't think Lyndon B. Johnson was a friend to Dr. King. Lyndon B. Johnson was a politician who would tear down Dr. King if he had the opportunity, and gosh darn, a number of times he did. President Johnson wasn't doing all that well with the Vietnam War. And then all of a sudden, the black guy he could always count on, coming to the White House and supporting him, all of a sudden he's beginning to talk about Vietnam. Makes those state dinner invitations few and far between. 1966, growing popularity of the Black Power movement, black stressing self-reliance and self-defense indicates King's influence was declining, especially among young blacks. 1966, King turns towards economic issues. SCLC moves civil rights struggle to the north, opens Chicago office to organize protests against housing and employment discrimination, and it fails miserably. Kim, why are you raining on Dr. King like this? I'm not. But I'm giving you for the first time an understanding and an insight in terms of exactly what Planned Parenthood had been doing since 1942. I want to present to you tonight the 1942 National Negro Advisory Council of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And I am showing to you that there was a conspiracy among the black faith community led by many of esteem. And I'm going to run out of time. I don't want to run into the Sackheads radio program. I will pick this up tomorrow night. But let me tell you some of the people that were in it. Mary McLeod Bethune, Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Walter G. Alexander, Dr. Walter G. Alexander, Paul Cumley, Dr. Paul Cumley, W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Dorothy Bolding Farabee, Ira Reed, Mary Church Terrell, Forrester B. Washington, Walter Wright, the Secretary, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, New York, New York, and Max Yeager, who's President, National Negro Congress, New York, New York. There's a multitude of others, ladies and gentlemen, but someone had to be handed an opportunity. Dr. King was handed that opportunity, and when we come back tomorrow night, I will talk with you about that opportunity in which he was, for the desperation of maintaining his national image, seeking to marry social justice, the war on poverty, and abortion, or population control, together for the sake of the black race. Ladies and gentlemen, a man once told me, always be bold and brave, never die a coward. I promise you I always will. I want you to know this without a shadow of a doubt, that at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sackheads Radio will be on the air with Sackhead Sean, Sackhead Clint, and also with our beautiful cuddly Free Sacco. For those of you who will be following along, go to the dark side, shrmedia.com, and listen in. Remember always, God has blessed America. It's time for America to bless God. We'll see you tomorrow night.